Big time fight coming up this weekend at 115 pounds. We have a rematch for both of these fighters. Rose Namajunas taking on Zhang Weili. The title switched hands the last time they fought, and it was kind of surprising that their paths didn't cross a little bit earlier, but I absolutely love the fact that we're going to get this fight. Now, Rose Namajunas might not absolutely love it because she was able to get a giant flash knockout win. The post-fight was very emotional. The build-up to their fight was wildly aggressive. And now we're here where we have Zhang Weili, who's changed up everything with her camp, now training out of Fight Ready MMA. I think that's a great move for her because Santino DeFranco, Eddie Cha, and then Zhang Weili's own coaches being there, I think that's an awesome move for her.
It's an interesting move. I always have some hesitations when you have a really high-profile fighter making a wholesale change to their gym and just really training regimen as a whole. And yes, you're right, she still has a lot of her original coaches. But think about Sergey Kovalev. He's one of your favorite boxers of all time. Sergey Kovalev had his original Russian trainers, went to America, started a new camp, and then all of a sudden he had 9 different voices in his corner, and nobody really knew exactly what or who took precedent or who was really the head coach. Like, this can go a lot of different ways. So it will just be really interesting to see how Weili looks in the opening minutes of this fight, because it's a very boxing thing to do. It's, I'm the champion, I lose, now let's make all these changes to my camp.
You could say it was like they were at a recycling plant and nobody knew what to do with the crusher. Now in this fight, Magnum, Zhang Weili, again, she's at Fight Ready, but the weirdest part about this is the fact that she's training with some former champions, Deiveson Figueiredo, but namely Henry Cejudo, who looks like he's the main ear and focus, not just on the countdown, but on the Instagrams. And the best part of the countdown is probably this. Why does Henry Cejudo have not just pillows of, like, his girlfriend, but also pillows of the schmo? When do we become pillows there?
How did we get a schmo pillow? No?
I don't know. There's a lot of really big questions coming out of that household, but it's interesting to see Cejudo because I think he's one of those guys, and we talked about it all the time. There's fighters that, should they hang him up earlier? Should they hang him up at all? Could they become very good coaches? Glover Teixeira didn't have to do any of that. Now look at where he's at. Great coach, great champ, old guy. He's 42. That's old enough for fighting. But still, it's interesting to see Cejudo there and the little wisdom nuggets that he's dropping along the way. I'm sure Figueiredo, with the help of the translators that they have there between all of the different languages, they're really able to figure out a great game plan. And again, I really think that Santino DeFranco and Eddie Cha are very, very good coaches. So I'm interested to see that change. But from Namajunas, the other thing I have is, and they talk about it in that embedded, or the countdown rather, okay, she's got her training camp at Elevation. She's got Pat Barry. She's got Trevor Whitman. Say whatever you want to say about the former, less the latter. But the fact that she's trained a little bit in Minnesota to work her wrestling with Brock Lesnar's old coach, I found that one a little bit of a head scratch. I was kind of surprised by it more than anything.
Really? I mean, Brock Lesnar used to train at Elevation, though. He's got a good relationship with Pat Barry, their main training partners.
Where's Chris Tuschischer fit into all of this?
It doesn't matter. I don't think that's that weird, her training with Lesnar. There's an obvious connection to the camp.
Not Lesnar. It was the coach. Lesnar's still in close to Regina.
But still, though, the coach would be the connection. Like, Lesnar would be the connection to the camp. That, like, him and Barry were main training partners, but Lesnar was UFC champ.
It's very interesting to me. All of that to say, coming into this fight, Zhang Weili had a giant head of steam. I mean, she had only lost the one fight. It was, her pro debut, 21 straight. We look at the last 5 on in. Old Jag Aguilar, Tisha Torres, Jessica Andrade knockout win, Joanna Jędrzejczyk split decision win, where one of the best fights I've ever seen in my entire lifetime. For Rose, she beats Jędrzejczyk. She beats Jędrzejczyk. She loses to Andrade by slam. She beats Andrade by split. And then she beat Zhang Weili. So coming into this fight, I don't know if we can say all the same things we said before their first fight, but coming into this one, big changes from Zhang Weili. Not as big changes from Rose, but again, we're looking to improve in certain areas. I love the fight because you talk about what both these women are good at, not necessarily the same things, really.
They're not, although they both are extremely well-rounded. They just kind of get it done in slightly different ways. And it is interesting. If you had told me before their first fight that Rose Namajunas had more power than Zhang Weili, I'd look at you sideways and think you're crazy. I wouldn't believe you at all. I understand Rose had knocked out Joanna, but still, Joanna had the weird weight cut. They had the rematch. That was a phenomenal fight. I just thought Zhang Weili would have been the much more powerful striker. But Rose showed that striking intelligence and timing just kind of beat pure athleticism, speed, and power. And that was the really impressive thing to see from Rose in their initial fight. It wasn't just the fact that she was able to land that head kick so early. It's the fact that she was able to set the head kick up so early. She knocked out Weili Zhang, slightly over a minute in their first fight, but she still was able to get enough work done to threaten with the low kick enough to then open up that high kick. That shows striking IQ that is really unheard of in multiple divisions, and something that really only a guy like Trevor Whitman can unlock within a lot of athletes. And that's why I almost like Rose Namajunas staying with her own gym more than Weili going and trying to get more information. This is the thing. I like Weili Zhang going to a different gym and at least trying to learn new things, but we normally see it take 1, 2, 3 training camps for that knowledge to really go and impact that new fighter all of a sudden. It takes a little bit of time. That's why I'm a little bit worried. If Weili all of a sudden comes into this fight trying to add new things to her game and not just being that phenomenal outside striker who can mix in her volume, have really nice power punches up the middle, I think she's doing something wrong. I really don't think that it was a game plan issue. It was just Rose did something really well in their first fight. So if I'm Weili, I would have the exact same game plan. I might just try to be slightly more aggressive. The problem I have with picking Zhang in this fight is she lost in the striking, which was the area I thought she would have success in. We didn't even see any grappling between these two women, and Rose Namajunas might be the trickiest jiu-jitsu player in this division. Her grappling, to me, is almost like Aljamain Sterling's, and that's kind of the comp I want to use for Rose Namajunas. I know Rose might have more power than Aljo, which is weird, you wouldn't really think of that, but just think of the way they fight. Rose, an unorthodox striker from the outside, mixes in her volume, can fight from both stances, but her bread and butter is once she gets fighters to the ground, she's so tricky and she can overwhelm her opponent with multiple passing attempts, ground and pound threats, and then open submissions up. It's just, after seeing what we saw in the first fight, now I think Weili will struggle a little bit on the feet with Rose, which is something I didn't think was going to happen in the first fight. And I definitely think Rose is the better grappler out of these two. I don't know what area of Zhang's game she could massively improve upon, and then it would all of a sudden show in this fight.
I think you're going to see a more technical game plan out of her. Again, made a little bit of a mistake, has to make some adjustments here and there, and I think wrestling with somebody like Figueiredo, somebody like Cejudo, everybody that they have fight-ready hell. Throw Tracy Cortez in there.
It's tough to wrestle Rose, though.
Vanessa Demopoulos is there. You get to work a little bit of that ground game. But you look at this one, the odds, they are at par. Where do they open? Well, at par. I mean, slight movement. Weili's way, actually. She's a little bit more, like a minus 115 to minus 105, thereabouts. The votes on Tapology are going to be new to us. They're going to be new to you. So I'm going to guess 70% Rose Namajunas over-under.
I was thinking 60-40 Rose, so I'll say under.
68% Namajunas out of 1,264 total votes, 61% by decision. For the 32% that have Zhang Weili, 55% by decision, 35% by knockout. More actually have, so if I go back to that graphic, 24% have Namajunas to win by knockout, to 35% that have Zhang Weili to win by knockout. That kind of surprises me based off of what we saw, but hey, people aren't taking recency bias into account. That's cool. That's all right.
My question for you, I guess, is, since Weili is such a well-rounded MMA fighter, she's shown that in the past. I know she's a primary striker, but she's shown the ability to grapple and wrestle in the past. What would you recommend she does try to add to her skill set to beat someone like Rose? And I know that's a hard question to just answer, but you're fighting another person who is well-rounded, who has that similar game. It's just, what could Weili do so much different in this fight?
Weili, I know you're not listening, but if it was me, pitter-patter on the outside, kind of wear her down in the first and second rounds, and then turn it on rounds 3 and 4 and 5.
Fair enough.
That's it. But I don't think she's listening. It'd be like me talking to the wall.
We have fans who watch these, Craig. You're more talking to them to tell them about different areas both fighters can have success in.
That's what I would see. Like, if you wanted to see something improve from Zhang Weili, that's what I would suggest to her, because that's a question that you asked me. But realistically, in this one, having seen that Rose can stand and trade, and she did it with Joanna too, so you got to really consider that in 2 different fights. But if it ever goes to the mat, I don't want to see Zhang Weili coming into this fight really aggressive with the takedowns and whatnot. That's where you're going to get in trouble, and that's the gym that she went to kind of accentuate certain areas. I thought about this one. I've racked my brain about this all week, trying to think about the pick, and maybe it'll change on Saturday. I'm a human being, so I might change my pick, but right now I have Rose Namajunas in the rematch.
So do I. This is a really close fight, and if Weili was a much more aggressive version, if she was able to close the distance on Rose,
which we've seen before.
Exactly, not let Rose get off with some of her kicks and long-range weapons, then I do think Weili has a path to victory. It's just, Once you take into consideration the fact that we didn't even get to see these two grapple, and we know that Rose is one of the best jiu-jitsu players in the division, it's really hard to pick against Thug Rose.
In this fight, both of us going Thug Rose, Thug Rose, Thug Rose to get the win. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have in this fight. Absolute banger at 115 and another big-time fight in a rematch up at the top. 170 gold. Kamaru Usman, looking like the best welterweight we've ever seen since, and maybe even better than Georges St. Pierre, taking on a guy that talks to nerds and virgins a lot on the internet. And Colby Covington, big time fight that you're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.